and it was kind of dimly lit because it was very early in the morning. And I started to read it, and it was addressed to John. It said, Mr. Ramsey. And it said, we have your daughter. And it just wasn't registering. And I may have gotten through another sentence, like, I can't, we have your daughter, and I don't know if I got any further than that.
What's the first thing you remember, Patsy?
The first thing I remember is waking up, getting dressed hurriedly, going downstairs, and putting a few things together to pack to take on the plane.
It's about what time?
It's early morning, before daylight.
You're up?
Mm-hmm.
Then what happens?
Then I go down the spiral staircase, and there on one of the runs of the stair is the 3-page ransom note. Ran back upstairs and pushed open her bedroom door, and she was gone. Came to the bottom of the stairs. There were 3 pages neatly laid across one of the runs of the stairway. I turned around to start to see what it was, and realized after I read the first couple of lines.
It was a ransom note.
Yes, it was.
That said?
I believe it said, listen carefully, something like, we have your daughter. And I just dashed back up those stairs as fast as I could and pushed her door open, and she wasn't in her bed.
And then?
And then I just screamed for John. Screamed.
Did Patsy turn on the light to read the ransom note? Did Patsy turn on the light to look for JONBENET? Did Patsy turn on the light at any point looking in the house? And remember, when all of this happened, it's before sunrise. Sunrise was at 7:21 a.m. All of this was happening before 6 a.m. I mean, this is Boulder in the middle of winter. And you can apply the same thing to the ransom note as to JONBENET, which is, well, the ransom note you need to read, so aren't you going to turn on a light? JONBENET, you need to know that she's not in the house. Aren't you going to turn on a light? And if Patsy doesn't turn on the light to read the note, does John? As time goes by, do they turn on the light?
I knew from Patsy's tone of voice that something was very wrong. And I rushed downstairs, and she told me there was a note, and I read it.
It was just so unbelievable. You just can't.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. So if it seems like we are very focused just on lights, well, that is exactly what we are. We are looking at this case through a single dimension, the dimension of lights. And now we in the section dealing with the ransom note and dealing with looking for JONBENET. Well, did you turn any lights on? And that is exactly the same question that Tom Haney asked Patsy Ramsey. When you got up, were there any lights on? Patsy Ramsey says, I am sure there were. Patsy, that's a yes or no question, and she doesn't answer it yes or no. She goes on to say, she sort of stutters. She says, the house was big and twisty-turny, so we nearly always left a light on in case somebody did get up or something, because there are a lot of little steps and whatnot, and we are not very good about turning lights off. But the question was, did you turn any lights on? Anyway, let's go to elsewhere in that same questioning process. Haney, so you're coming down the stairs. Are there any lights on in that spiral staircase? Patsy Ramsey, again, it's a yes or no question, right? Just, can't remember exactly. What? You can't remember if there are any lights on in that spiral staircase. Before we get to the rest of this analysis, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. By the way, thank you very much for the book review that came out just very recently from Kyle Agent. He said, This was really, really good. I learned a lot here. There's a lot of minute detail in this, and it really teaches you how to think about and approach the details. Bravo. That was left on February 1st. Thanks so much for that. And then just a reminder, the next episode in this series is going to deal with hinkiness around the flashlight and the question, did Patsy turn on the light in Burke's room? If you find this analysis worthwhile, please hit the thanks button and let's get started. So let me ask you a question. The sun hasn't come up and you are in your home and there's a ransom note. Someone has broken in to your home and taken your child, right? And it's before sunrise. Are you going to turn a light on or not? Are you going to turn a light on to read the ransom note? Are you going to turn a light on to look for JONBENET? Are you going to turn a light on? Now, I don't know about you. If someone was in my house, if there's evidence of someone in my house, I would want to know that they're not there anymore. I would want to be secure that they are not in the house anymore. I probably also want to know how they got in and got out. So if we go back to Patsy's interview, she says something about, well, she's asked about the bed. Was somewhere else in the room? You didn't. Patsy says, it just happened so fast. And I, read that letter and said, we have your daughter. Your mind goes berserk. I mean, and then I went up there and my child is not in the bed. Nothing against your questioning, but no, I didn't stand around and say, I wonder if she's in here. I wonder if she's in there. I screamed for John. Now, if you think about that, she's kind of just accepting what the note says, which is barely read. And to play devil's advocate, although Patsy accepts the note and John accepts the note, and even the police to some extent accept the note, when Fleet White arrived, he didn't. He remembered at one point his daughter had I think played hide and seek, or she'd hidden away, and they'd called the police and they'd searched for her in the house and found her. And ultimately, that's exactly what happened with JONBENET. If you searched for her in the house, if you simply went through the house, room by room, step by step, turn on one light at a time until the entire house, every single light was illuminated in that room, you would have found JONBENET. Now, I want you to think about the converse. If there's staging, if the ransom note is bogus, if there's some kind of cover-up going on, then do you want to turn lights on? Are you really going to be looking around, or are you going to be almost focusing everyone's attention on, well, there's a ransom note and we can't look for JONBENET because she's not here and someone else must have taken her. That's where our attention must be. Well, that's fine, except at the end of the day, JONBENET was found in the house and in a dark, windowless room where the light was off. If we go elsewhere to the questioning, she's talking about a letter downstairs. I think that's where Patsy says that to John. There's a letter downstairs. Tom Haney says, Patsy says, and I think I went down and got it, meaning I think I went downstairs and got the ransom note. Well, that's also, did you or didn't you? And at the end of the day, I don't think Patsy did do that. And then she adds, I just can't remember everything. Tom Haney, to the best of your recollection, we will take a second here, again with the red marker. Let's indicate where John goes. You said he goes to check on Burke. So literally what they're doing, the police are trying to nail down Patsy's statement. So at this time you were here, then you did that, then you did that. They're trying to make sense of it. And I want you to think about this idea of this whole case. There's a little girl that's gone missing. Are the Ramseys helping to illuminate, to provide clarity, to shine a light on what happened to her, to help the police find out what happened? In other words, to get rid of all the shadows and the darkness and to make things absolutely clear, to illuminate everything? Or does it feel like something else is happening? That there's this sort of shadowy, vague, difficult to see dimness associated with this case? Anyway, Patsy then says, I think he went to check on Burke, meaning John, Patsy Ramsey, in this area, Tom Haney. And what is he doing there? Patsy Ramsey, he said, there is the note. I think I handed him the note here. somehow in this space he got the note. So she kind of qualifies that to say somehow in this space John got the note. But if you actually read the Ramsey's book, The Death of Innocence, John basically kneels over the note in his underwear and reads the note without touching it. And Patsy does something similar. Tom Haney says, okay, let's put an X on the main floor diagram where you first, and again what he's trying to do here is just nail down Patsy's statement, like does any of this stuff make sense? And then elsewhere, scrolling down a little bit through the statement, Patsy says, threw it down and just took off, and then came back down the stairs, and whether I picked it up and then he came down, I gave it to him and said, here's the note or whatever. Right? And when she says whether I picked it up, and then he came down, it seems like she's saying, almost about to say, well, whether I picked it up and then he came down and I gave it to him, I can't really say. But a lot of this stuff is couched in, we were hurrying, we were panicked, and so all of this happened in a blur and we can't really tell what's going on. But think about all of that and then people being invited over, and that makes this whole blurriness even worse. Which is why Tom Haney says, now, are you just guessing or do you know? And this is about handling the note and handing the note and picking up the note. Patsy Ramsey says, I can't remember exactly. Tom Haney, okay. So let's go a little bit further down. Tom Haney says, okay, he is there. He was in his underwear on his hands and knees. I think that's a wood floor here. Patsy Ramsey, Now think about it. John is in his underwear on his hands and knees at about 6 a.m. in the middle of winter in Boulder. It's really cold. And this is what's going on. Patsy says, Tom Haney, okay, is there a light on there then? Patsy says, yes, just this hall light here. Tom Haney, do you recall, did you or he turn it on? Patsy Ramsey, I don't know. Now, again, I just want you to think in the most basic way. Someone has broken into your house and taken your child, and you are now ambulant before the sun has come up, it's dark outside. Do you turn on a light? And that's one scenario. That's the scenario where the Ramseys are innocent and this really happened. You might say they were so caught off guard that they just weren't thinking straight, and that's possible. Is it likely? Maybe not, but is it possible? Maybe it is. Is it probable? Is it reasonable? And then there's the other side to the question, which is, if something hinky was going on where a ransom note's being written in secret to make it look a certain way, well, are you going to turn lights on then? Are you going to draw attention to the house at night while all of this is going on?
Food for thought.
Now, that's all for now. I'm not going to take it further than that. We will deal with part 4 in the next analysis, the hinkiness around the flashlight, and did Patsy turn on the light in Burke's room? I want to leave you with one final thought, and that is each one on its own. So you might say Patsy didn't turn the light on to read the note. Well, she was confronted with something and there wasn't any time, and that perhaps makes sense. And so each one on its own, I agree, you can sort of give the benefit of the doubt. But what happens when you add another one, such as the neighbors said that they saw lights on where they shouldn't have been and lights off where they shouldn't have been. And then you add also coming into Burke's room and not turning the light on either. Being confronted with a message from an intruder, and are you not going to at some point turn a light on and look carefully at this message that they left behind within the context of, well, you don't have your daughter and this note is going to give you some information about her. Maybe you should look at it. Maybe you should study it. Maybe you should look at the handwriting. Or are you going to do that without turning the lights on while it's dark? Thank you for listening this far, and look out for the next episode in this interesting series.